Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Daily Faith Builder. Hope you're well this morning. Happy Thursday. Do you ever wonder, especially now, what is God up to? What is he doing? And I think we all do, especially in these uncertain times that we're in. We just kind of say, God, what is going on in this world? One of the foundational blessings of our hope as followers of Jesus is the providence of God, is knowing and resting in that God has everything in his hands. And to know as a follower of Jesus that the promise that Jesus says that no one can snatch us out of Jesus's hands or the Father's hands, that we're secure in his providential, gracious hands. And also just understanding that history is in God's hands, is that he's at work, his redemptive history, and there's his saving plan from the beginning through all this. And we have to say, well, what is going on with this craziness? Why doesn't God act? These are all questions that we have, and all of these questions raise the importance of understanding the end times and having a proper understanding of what God is doing, and have a filter for that, to look at history right through the lens of the Bible and prophecy and what is going on. Our understanding of prophecy in the end times is going to directly impact how we're going to carry out the mission of God now and rest in what we see the scripture saying is going on in the world. So this morning, I just want to summarize where we've been in looking at Revelation 20 and this idea of the framework of the end times. We look at the millennium, this 1,000 years of Christ reigning, and where does his return come in, and what is God's purposes and all that. We first looked at this issue of amillennialism. And amillennialism is Jesus ascends back to the Father after his resurrection. And amillennialism says that everything we find in Revelation is just being carried out. Most of it has been fulfilled in the past, sometime in the history of the world, somewhere in the past. And the blessing of amillennialism is that it allows us to look at, like Jesus prophesied the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, that it actually happened in history, and it was prophesied in the Bible that it would happen. The negative of an amillennial position that it's a focus on the now. In other words, that already things are fulfilled in the Bible, and it's weak in understanding and seeing the scripture as giving us details for the future. So it's good for the now, but the not yet, it's weak in. And so we need to understand a better framework for that. Then we looked at premillennialism. And here we see at Jesus' return, he ushers in a literal 1,000 years of reign. Remember, the amil position we just looked at says amil, meaning that it's not a literal 1,000 years, is that God, it's a fulfillment of Jesus fulfilling in this life and through the church age all the blessings of God. But with a premill, we take the 1,000 years literally at Jesus' return when he comes back in the future. And Jesus is going to literally carry these things out until the final judgment. Now, what is good about the premill position is it takes scripture very literally, and it has a high focus on the not yet, on the prophetic. In other words, what God is going to do in the future, and sees not everything in the Bible necessarily fulfilled in the past, but lots of it telescoping maybe some fulfillment in the past, but yet the majority of it still is to come when Jesus comes. And that gives us this encouragement, right, to wait and see and have eyes for him and hope, and looking at the lens through scripture at history of what is going on. Well, the final position is this one called postmillennialism, and it's kind of a combination of the two to some extent. But at Jesus' ascension, in other words, when he goes back after his resurrection, then this time period is not necessarily a literal 1,000 years any longer, but what's happening is the world, this view believes that more and more the world is going to get better and more Christian. And this millennial, slowly that 1,000 years is going to be a picture of the world getting more Christian, more blessed, and fulfilling through the church's work in the world, bringing the blessings of God, until at the end of that sometime is that Jesus returns. Now, what the post-mill position is good about is that it kind of brings the now and the not yet all together. But what it's bad about, I should say, is that it can cause us to have a view that kind of a harsh, or a view of history that things are getting better, actually, that the church is going to work and change this world and make it into something good. And so it can mislead us out of our mission of changing hearts, because we don't see the church really in the history of the world changing much of this world. The scripture tells us this world is passing away, especially in light of where we're at now through COVID and everything. It's interesting how our view of the end times can change according to what happens in history. That's why it's important to study this and understand our position on this. But what we do gain from the post-millennial position is hope, is that yes, the church is to be the light shining on the hill, and to bring the kingdom. Now we're to pray that, Lord, your kingdom come, right? As your will, and your will be done as in heaven as it is, or on earth as it is in heaven, should be our prayer. And so just a little summary. Tomorrow we're going to wrap this up with some wonderful foundational thoughts when it comes to the end times. So hope this blesses you. God bless.